And now, for the week of January 23rd, Photoshop TV is on the air.
Welcome to Photoshop TV from the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And here's your hosts, the Photoshop guys, Scott Kelby, Dave Cross, and Matt Kloskowski.
All right, everybody, welcome to another lethargic episode of Photoshop TV. Hey, we're coming to you once again from NAP's headquarters here in the graphics department where they create Photoshop User Magazine.
Yes, sir, and this week's episode is brought to you by Wacom, and we'd also like to welcome one of our new sponsors, Peachpad Press.
We're also brought to you by iStockPhoto.com.
And the Epson Print Academy, EpsonPrintAcademy.com, and a brand new sponsor, B&H Photo. Yeah. Awesome. So we're very excited to have them along board. I'm Scott Kelby. Welcome to the show. Of course, joining me, the other Photoshop guys, Mr. Matt Kloskowski.
Welcome back again.
We'll be here today rocking the houseky, and also, once again, flying the Canada colors, Mr. Dave Cross.
Good day, A.
Well, welcome, everybody. We got a great show for you. We brought some tips and some tricks and some tutorials. Dave, what'd you bring this time?
I have a couple of things, actually. I'm on this kind of vanishing point kick. Last week, I showed you a little vanishing point tip. I'm going to improve upon that this week with something I just discovered, and then do another tutorial also on vanishing point.
Matt?
I've got two tips. I've got one for Mac users, one for PC users, and that's all in one tip, but kind of you have to wait and see. And then I've got another tutorial on how to create photographic edges with Illustrator and Photoshop.
Sweet. I brought two tips. I brought a beginner's tip today on how to resize your images and a Photoshop classic effect. Hey, we've got a big giveaway today. We're going to be giving away a designer Adobe bag. We've given away some fun ones before. This one is a $250 designer bag. It's just fantastic. We'll talk a little about it a little later. And we've also, inside is a ticket to Photoshop World. So a full conference pass. We're going to do that. But first, we're going to kick things off with a tip from our own Matt Kloskowski.
I am. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, the tip is going to deal with, well, I'm going to give you one for Mac users and one for PC users. So let's take a look at the Mac user one first. You can command click on the file name that appears at the top of your document, and you can see where the image is stored on your hard drive. Now, here's the thing, you might forget, if you want to get straight to that folder, what you can do is just release your mouse button when it's over the folder, and the folder will automatically open inside of Finder for you, so you can get right to the folder where your image is stored. Now that's only on Mac, so I'm going to give you a little PC tip here. I don't want to leave PC people out. This one snuck by a lot of people with CS2. What a lot of people, and you don't have it on the Mac because you can move your windows anywhere, but on the PC, the Photoshop window used to constrain your image. So if I moved my image down here, it would start to disappear behind the Photoshop window. But now in Photoshop CS2, I can actually take my images.
This is crazy.
It is crazy because that's big. I mean, you used to be stuck in your Photoshop window. So if you're using multiple windows inside of your desktop here, you can actually easily move it all around. Just move it right outside the Photoshop boundaries. So that is my multi-platform, please everybody tip for today.
Pleasing everyone is important, and a tip that's multi-platform too. That was I took
everybody
done.
into account there.
You did, because most tips are both platforms automatically, but that one had to be specifically done for both. So very well done. Well, last week I did a little tip on using vanishing point to do cloning. And this time I'm going to do something, because I discovered something, of course, after the fact, that makes it even easier. So check out this way you can make cloning and vanishing point even better. Let's take a look.
Easier.
Go ahead and get our old friend, the vanishing point filter, open. And last time what I did was I went through this long involved thing of drawing a great big grid, and then much to my delight and surprise, I discovered that if you double click right here on the tool you would normally use to draw the grid, check this out, it just does a great big grid in one shot.
You must have been so delighted.
I was very delighted, because now it means when I go to do any kind of cloning, I don't have to worry, because the whole thing is a grid and all my work is done. Now, I think you'll find that once you've used that way of cloning, you might use it an awful lot, because it really gives you that extra preview you just don't get with the normal clone stamp tool.
Oh yeah, especially with just that one click.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
makes it much easier. So,
and that's also the cool thing about Photoshop. It's like you're always learning new stuff.
Well, exactly. I thought it was a cool tip,
yeah.
And then a few days later I went, even better. So
that's why I love this program so much, because you never have it all down. All right, I brought a beginner's tip. This is for beginners. It comes off a question that was on the blog. By the way, this week's beginner's tip is sponsored by B&H Photo. It's where I buy all my own camera gear. Now, if you're a Net member, you should buy all your own camera gear there too, because basically the shipping is free if you're an app member. Awesome. So go check them out at bhphoto.com. It's bhphoto.com, not BNH, even though the company's name is B&H. Go figure. Anyway, we have a beginner's tip for you. The beginner's tip that we're going to do is right off the blog where somebody said, you know, and he said we're all confused about this, so I thought I must be confused, Dave as well. No, everyone's confused about the ratio that your camera takes a photograph is often different than being able to size to a 5x7 or an 8x10 or something like that. So I'm going to show you basically one way. There's a dozen ways to do it. I'm going to show you one way to resize your photos to fit that as close as possible.
Awesome.
So let's do it. All right, I've opened up a 6 megapixel photo. Well, it's not a 6 megapixel photo. It's a photo taken with a 6 megapixel camera. Here is the image size. You can see it's 10 inches wide by 6 deep. Okay, let's say that you wanted to make this, and in his blog thing, he wanted a 5x7 at 250 dpi to print out. Okay, so now again, there's all kinds of different ways to do this. I'm going to show you just a really, really easy way. This is one method, not the officially approved method, not the only method, but it is one way of doing it. All right, so here we go. Let's set up a 7x5. So type in 7, type in 5, type in 250, and it will create a blank document that is 7x5 by 250. Let me shrink it down. Now here's what you're going to want to do. Grab your photo, your other photo, and just hold, you don't have to hold a shift key, just drag it over onto that other document, and now you can close the original. Okay, now you can see that your image is actually much bigger than the 5x7 by 250, so here's what you do. Go to Free Transform, press Command-T on a Mac or Control-T on a PC. And you see you can't reach the Free Transform handles, but there's a trick to reaching the Free Transform handles. Hold Command-0 on a Mac or Control-0 on a PC, and it resizes your entire window. Now, part of it's cut off from our recording here, but it resizes your whole thing so you can see all the handles and reach them like that. Now you can hold the Shift key so everything stays in proportion. And by the way, holding that Shift key is critical to keep your image from stretching. You just want to size it proportionally. Now you can get it to fit. Now you can see that the actual aspect ratio, let me close this here. The aspect ratio of what a digital camera takes is a little different than a 5x7. So now you're going to have to decide, do I want to cut off this side or this side? But basically, it's up to you which side you cut off. So that's basically one way to do it. When you get it like you like it, position it where you want it, hit the return key on Mac or enter on a PC, and now you have it exactly framed for a 5x7 at 250 ppi resolution. And then let's get it back to size here. And then I'll just want to open up the image size dialog box and show you that, see, it is now a 7x5 at 250. And again, that's just one way. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. We'll look at other ways in the future. But
right. It is a great way, though, because you can position your photo. And, good idea. Excellent.
All right. Now, Dave's brought another tip. It's another Vanishing Point tip. Soon he will be known as Vanishing Dave.
Yes, it's the whole, I'm going to write a whole book, just Vanishing Point tips. And this one is, the problem with Vanishing Point is you always have to have a 3D photo. I mean, a photo that has like some perspective in it.
Right.
I'm going to show you a way where if you don't, you can just start from scratch and create a really cool 3D grid using Vanishing Point.
Use my machine.
I'd be happy to.
Please.
All right, so all I'm going to do here is I've started with a document, and all I have is just added a color to my background, and I'm going to start building something from scratch using a couple of different things. So first of all, I want to make sure I'm doing my work on separate layers. So I'm going to add a new layer and then use a filter under Render known as 3D Transform, which you can just sort of see the 3D part. Now, if you don't have this on your machine, it wasn't installed automatically as of the last couple of versions of Photoshop. So it's on the goodies folder in your original CD. You can just drag it into plugins, then it will appear. And it basically brings up this little interface, and all we're going to do is draw a little kind of QB type shape. I think that is the official term for that.
That is the official term, by the way.
And then going to make another one, and perhaps even, yes, another one, just because I have no idea. And then the key part of this is we're going to use this little rotation tool, and what you need to do is just rotate this enough so you're seeing different shades. You want to see something like that where I have shades of gray, and then I'm going to click OK, and there's my weird looking little shapes. Now I'm going to make another new layer and go back to our friend, our favorite friend now, Vanishing Point. And here's the 3D stuff that I'm going to create. I'm going to use my little plane tool to basically draw one side of my box, like so. And then you'll hold down the Command key on the Mac, Control for Windows, and look, it just follows the edge. Now don't worry if it doesn't follow exactly the cue because it's doing it more geometrically correctly than Vanishing Point ever would.
I'm worried, Dave.
Don't be worried,
Yeah, I
because
have
watch.
concerns.
Watch. Look at that. Then you can make one go that way, and you can make one come down, say, this way. And we can make this one just continue off like this.
Into the sunset.
And here's the key to this now.
Well, Dave, I don't know. I like the way it looks right there.
Yeah, it's awesome, but check it out. If you don't just click OK, you'll hold down the Option or Alt key and click OK, it actually puts the grid on the layer. So if I hide my box, I have a 3D grid that I just created. Now let's change the color. I have white now as my foreground color. If I can't just press Option, Delete, or Alt Backspace because that would fill the whole layer. So here's what I do. Option Shift, Delete, or Alt Shift Backspace, and I get my little 3D grid. Now remember, if you look under your filter menu, you don't see 3D Transform. It's because it's no longer installed automatically. So you just have to go to the Goodies folder on your original CD, and you can install that plugin, and then you'll be ready to go. Now, in a moment, we're going to throw it to Matt with the news. This week's news is brought to you by Wacom, makers of the wide format tablet. If you haven't been there recently, go check it out because they do have new drivers for their tablets. Also brought to you by iStock Photo, makers of the fastest growing collection of royalty-free photos and illustrations. Go to iStockPhoto.com. They haven't been there in a while. They've got a brand new site. It's worth checking out. So with that being said, now it's off to Matt with the news.
Now it's time for the news, Storm Team News with Matt Kloskowski.
All right, everybody's a funny guy here. All right, so first up this week, Mr. Retro recently updated their machine wash filters. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to MrRetro.com. It's filters for Photoshop. They're basically actions, and they apply very cool grungy textures to your Photoshop documents. So if you haven't seen them yet, you like to do that kind of effect, go to MrRetro.com. Also, Adobe has updated Lightroom to 1.1 beta. So when you launch Lightroom, it should tell you this. If it doesn't tell you, then just go to labs.adobe.com and you can get the update there. And next up, so let's say you want to win a MacBook Pro.
Let's say, just in case.
Let's just say.
Let's just assume you want to win a MacBook Pro. Layers Magazine, in cooperation with CDW, is giving you a chance to get your hands on one of these new MacBook Pro laptops. Just go to layersmagazine.com. If you go to the homepage, there's a place where you can sign up. And finally, not everybody just uses Photoshop that's watching this TV show. Chances are you probably use something else. Well, Adobe has recently announced the Production Studio. So there's new versions of After Effects, Premiere. So just go to adobe.com. You can check it out. There's a standard edition and there's a premium edition. So that's it for the news. Back to you, guys.
All right, it's contest time. But before we get on to the contest, we've got, well, first we have some news about the contest.
Right. The big news is that in the past we had trivia, which was just for fun, and then the actual contest, we decided to roll them into one. So from now on,
the fun is gone.
The fun is gone. This is the important thing. So the trivia question is the contest question. So we'll be giving you this week's contest question in a moment, but first we need to review what happened last week.
Last week we were giving away 3 great prizes. We gave away the Adobe Cooler. We gave away a NAT membership, including a subscription to Photoshop User.
And the software package from On1, the bundle of software package.
With $499 by itself.
Yes, awesome.
And the winner of that whole prize package from last week was?
Well, actually, let me give you the question first.
Question?
To remind you of the question.
Very good.
The
People
question was,
are on the edge of
where
their
do you
seats right
find
now, you know?
where do you find the command called Show All Channels? And the answer is the histogram palette. And the winner was Mark Corgi from San Diego, California.
So congratulations to you, Mark. You've got that coming to you in just be between about 6 to 8
no
weeks.
time at all.
Maybe a year, depends.
So we will be right back in 60 seconds or so with this week's contest question.
All right, and speaking of Photoshop World, we're going to be doing a live broadcast there,
That's
the Photoshop guys.
Yes,
We'll be there doing an episode of Photoshop TV. Of course, Matt will be teaching there, Dave teaching there, myself, 30 other instructors. It should be a blast. It's a 3-day Photoshop Love Fest. If you've never been down to Photoshop World, it's amazing. This year it's in Miami, March 22nd through 24th. I think they said that probably on the commercial. So we're not going to rehash that, but I do want to tell you, last week we mentioned there were some really great flights, right? There was a flight from Philly last week for like under $200. If you want to come and join us, we went to Expedia.com and looked up a couple of flights for you. Hey, AirTran had flights direct from Dallas to Miami, $240 round trip on AirTran. Chicago on American Airlines, $216, and from Boston right down to Miami Beach, $233. It's freezing everywhere else, but in Miami Beach, it will be warm and sunny. We'll be there. We hope you come down and join us at Photoshop
And from
World.
anywhere in Canada, it's like $1,000, but well worth it. So no, it isn't
every
really.
penny. No. So come on down and join us at Photoshop World. Should be a lot of fun. Also, if you're coming to Photoshop World, bring your camera, because on the show floor for the first time, we're doing these live studio shots where basically we're going to have live models, we're going to have motorcycles, we're going to have all kinds of different things that you can shoot, all professionally lit. You just sit there and work it on your own. It'll be a lot of fun. You can get the shots just the way you want it.
Right.
All right, now it's contest time. We've got some great stuff. This thing, I don't know if you've seen this. Dave was mentioning earlier that he got a press release on this when it first came out. I wrote about it on my blog. It's an Adobe bag. It's a leather messenger bag, or what Matt calls a European man bag. It's designed by the Medium Design Group, and this thing is it is the nicest messenger bag probably ever made. It's just phenomenal, and it's got you probably can't see it on camera, but it's got a blind embossed Adobe logo on it, and it's like the ultimate bag. And of course, inside it, cleverly hidden in here, is a full conference pass to Photoshop World. We'll be giving away a pass every week here on Photoshop TV. So first, what's the question, Dave? It's Dave's Photoshop, and this is the question.
This is the question you need to enter, and that is, where would you go to embed your email address into a photo? And you need to be very specific in your answer.
Exactly, and that doesn't mean type it on the front of the photo. He's talking about embedding it into the photo itself.
Right.
All right. Where do they send the...
They send their entry to photoshoptv@photoshopuser.com, and they must send their entry by January 27th at 12 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
PM.
We will choose a winner at that point.
PM. Not
Okay,
AM.
now back to the tips. I brought a classic Photoshop effect. Now the tip that I'm bringing is actually from my book called, surprisingly enough, Photoshop Classic Effects. This is a column I used to write in Photoshop User magazine. Then Felix Nelson picked it up for a while. Dave, you're doing the Classic
That's
Effects
correct,
now.
yes.
Well, this is a whole book like that, and I'm going to do a technique from the book. But then afterwards, there's a reason why I'm doing it from it. I will tell you about it right after the tip. So let's go ahead and get started with a Photoshop Classic Effect. All right. When I'm talking about classic effects, what I'm really talking about are images that have been around for a while. People have been doing these type of effects, but in this book I'm showing how these effects are used today. And in the example we're going to look at here, I'm going to show you how we're going to take one image, this watch image, and use it twice in the same photograph. We're going to use it for a background and for a foreground image. So I'm going to grab the image and just drag it over right here. Here's our image. It's kind of giant. And I'm going to do two things to it. I'm going to rotate it. Let's go to Free Transform. I'm going to rotate it a little bit. I want it big because it is going to be our background. Then to give it kind of a 3D look, I'm going to hold the Command key on Mac or to be the Control key on PC and just bend it back so it kind of gets a little flattening look like that. We can rotate it a little bit more now, and we're going to kind of get it into position, something like this. So it makes a nice kind of background, and we'll hit Return or Enter on a PC. So this is our background image. Now that we've kind of got that into place, the second part of this is we're going to go over here to the Layers palette. I need to put a selection around this watch. So we're going to hold the Command key and click right on the layer thumbnail. Or on PC would be the Control key. Now if you have CS, click over here. If you have CS2, click right on the thumbnail. They change that little thingy there. Okay, now add a new layer and let's fill that with black. So we're actually filling that shape with black by pressing Option Delete on Mac or Alt Backspace on PC. And to reveal it then, what you do is you just lower the opacity a little bit. You see how your image kind of comes back a little bit? You can dial in exactly how much of the image you want. We're going to make it pretty ghosted back like that. Now we'll go back and get the second part of the image. So here's the same image again, but this time we're going to shrink it way down. We'll use Free Transform to shrink it way down. And by way down, and that's a technical term, I mean way down. Something like that. So here's the same. And here's how, if you add some text, you'll see how that might be used in an ad something like that. We'll just make our little type layer visible there. We'll close this other one since we don't need it anymore. And you can see how we've got a back screen version of the same image and then the product shot right up here. And again, this is how a classic effect like a back screen winds up being used in today's advertising. Now, at the beginning of that tip, I said there was a reason why I was showing it, and that is because if you enter Dave's trivia contest, we're going to pick 5 lucky people at random.
5?
5 people at random who enter the contest to also get a signed copy of this book, Photoshop Classic Effects, which can be found on Amazon.com, BNN.com, and wherever fine Photoshop books are sold. So make sure you get a copy. If you don't have one, buy one for everyone you know. Buy one for people you don't even know, strangers on the street, people like that. Hey, guess what? It's probably time for a tip from that man who rocks the house key, my good friend and cohort and co-host and Photoshop guy, Matt.
Thank you. All right, so this week, I'm going to show this time, thank you for the
It's rotating like a rotisserie.
Yes, it's just rotated around here. This time I'm going to show you a tip on using Illustrator and Photoshop together. Now, if you're a photographer and you're thinking, you know what, I'm not into Illustrator, here's the thing. I'm going to show you how to add a photographic edge to a photo. So watch anyway, because I bet you can use this.
And if you're a photographer that has the Creative Suite, you need to get into Illustrator because you own it. So here's Matt's double tip, double time.
Okay, so let's get started here. Now, before I do get into it, though, let me mention that this week's tip is brought to you by the Epson Print Academy. They've got a brand new tour for 2006, so go check them out at epsonprintacademy.com. All right, now back to the tutorial. I've got my photo open. I want to add a photographic edge on it. I'm going to use Illustrator to do this, so let's just jump over to Illustrator. Now I'm going to press Control or Command N, create a new file here, and go grab the brush tool. Now just draw one stroke right down the center of the canvas here, and that creates a brush stroke, but go to your brushes palette and you'll see a chalk scribble brush. If you click on that, you get kind of a nice rough edge brush stroke. So just go to your stroke palette right after that, and you can get to all these right under the window palette and just increase the stroke weight so it makes it a little bit thicker. Now draw a couple of brush strokes right in the center of the artboard here, and I'm going to concentrate just in the center to make sure I get a lot of black in there. The edges can be random, so that's fine. Now, I've got my shape, so I'm going to press Control or Command A, and I'm going to select it all, and then I'm going to copy it. Now I can actually take this, I can paste it into Photoshop. So we'll switch over into Photoshop, and I'm going to go to the Layer menu, go down to Vector Mask. Remember, we're working with vectors. These are vector objects from Illustrator. So go to Vector Mask, Hide All. Now you don't see anything, but when I press Control or Command V for paste, and I choose the Path option, click OK, you're going to see a vector object get pasted right in the middle there. So now press Control or Command T, brings up Free Transform, and just make it larger. Press the Enter key. Now it looks a little weird. The way to get around it, just create a new layer here, and now you can see the photo. Drag that new layer to the bottom, fill it with white, and now you've got a nice photo with a photographic edge. And the last thing you might want to do here is just double click that layer, add a drop shadow, and then you can see here it actually adds a drop shadow behind that nice photographic edge here. So that's how you can use Illustrator and Photoshop together to create a nice effect with your photos. Now the cool thing about that technique is that those edges come from Illustrator, so they're vector shapes. You can resize them and you won't ever lose any image quality in them.
Beautiful.
So, awesome. All right. So each week we do a Q&A from our blog. Our blog site, by the way, is at photoshoptv.com, so you can go there and post any questions you got. This week's question comes from Mike, and Mike asks, why would I want to shoot in Camera Raw versus JPEG mode? Scott, I know you got some good feedback on this.
You know, there's a lot of things. We could go and have a round table about why shooting in Camera Raw is better, the advantages and the quality and on and on. But can I tell you one that a lot of people don't think about? A great reason to shoot in Camera Raw and edit in Camera Raw, and shoot in RAW and edit in Camera Raw is because it's just easier. Everything's right there in one dialog box. You've got the automated controls. You're not having to go to 5 different places. It's just a couple of sliders. It's so easier. Right. And Dave was talking about this earlier.
One of the advantages too is it's automatically non-destructive, so you don't have to worry about making any big changes to it.
Make some mistakes. You always have the original is still kept in its shape. You never damage the original. So a couple of great things. And again, there's a lot more we could talk about, but I think that's a really compelling reason right there to shoot.
Thank you, Mike. We'll be sending Mike, a Photoshop TV t-shirt.
Absolutely. A Photoshop TV t-shirt is on its way. It should be there within 6 to 8 months. Also, every week we like to leave you with a project to do between now and this week. And this week we brought 3 different websites that we want you to check out. The first one, the one that I want to recommend to you, is photoshopsupport.com. They have an excellent Photoshop blog. So go to photoshopsupport.com, click on the blog link. It's on the left side, and the blog is run by Photoshop expert Jennifer Apple. It's a great site. They're big supporters of the show.
That's right.
So please tell Jennifer we said hi. Stop by and check out all the tutorials and great news coverage they have on that site.
Also, check out sessions.edu. It's an online school of graphic design, and they've recently updated all their courses for CS2, but here's the cool thing about it is they have web design programs, they have layout programs, they've got a lot of great graphic design programs. So if you're into more than just Photoshop, it's a good place to go. I teach a Photoshop course there, but besides the point, it's just a cool website to go visit.
So you're really plugging yourself.
See what they got. So go to sessions.edu.
Also, peachpit.com has just introduced a brand new blog. So
Peachpit's
Press.
got a blog.
Peachpit's got a blog. If you go there and check it out, you'll see a link that says, check out our brand new blog with all sorts of useful information.
That's right. We want to welcome them, of course, as a brand new sponsor. Also, we had another new sponsor that we want to welcome to the show, B&H Photo. And I'm such a big fan of B&H's. They're incredible people, and I buy all my stuff there. I buy all my gear, all my computer gear, all my camera gear. I buy all my memory there. I buy everything from them. And, of course, if you're a NAT member, shipping is free. So welcome to B&H. We love you guys. Thank you for being a part of the show. And, of course, we have the people that have been hanging with us from the very beginning.
Wacom, always been with us at the beginning. iStock Photo.
Absolutely.
And also recently the Epson Print Academy.
Right,
so we thank all of those sponsors.
Yeah, go check out their new tour, Epson Print Academy. They got some great, they have a whole new multi-level thing there. They got some of the biggest hitters in the industry. Go check it out at EpsonPrintAcademy.com. All right, on behalf of myself, Scott Kelby, and Matt Kloskowski.
Have a good week.
Who once again rocked the house key, and Mr. Cross.
Greetings from Canada.
We'll see you guys next week for another salacious episode of Photoshop TV. Thanks for watching.